the win is that early in the season of transition, you're really just asking a lot of questions. You're not coming in to announce things.
Absolutely.
You're not coming in to tell everybody where we're going. You're creating some space to really get curious and to kind of check in with everybody. You've got a whole list of questions on page 42. How strong is the team for real? What financial situation are we in? What fires have to be put out? What fears and insecurities are floating around the team? And you go on with the list. But say more about, why is it important to ask these questions, and how do we approach this with the right mindset so that we don't miss this critical window of doing the audit?
Yeah, and what's in there is that ... for real. That's the key, right? So many of us heard in the interviews, well, this is great and this is great. And, I really encourage people, when you're interviewing, so often people are like, I just want this job. And so you just ignore some of these flags because you're not asking the right questions. You're not stepping into a space that you fully actually understand what you're stepping into. And so that's why I always like to add that for real part of that. Like, how are we for real? How are we really? Like, are we saying we're okay, but we're not? Is the team skirting around some culture toxic problems because they want to be seen as competent? Like, whatever those things may be, as we step in, audit, evaluation, you can call it whatever you want. It is so critical that we really get to the bottom of how we're doing. Like, financially, that's critical, right? I need to see these P&Ls before I say yes to this job. I would really like to know where we are standing, good and bad. Like, if I know it's bad, at least I know it's bad. If I step in and take the role and then I find out it's bad, that's a problem, right? That's where we step into a really sticky situation. In the back of the book, I have 4 case studies, and there were different leaders who have taken over in different spheres. And one of those is Buzz Williams, who's the head coach of men's basketball at Texas A&M. When I interviewed him, it was the 4th major D1 program he'd taken over as a head coach. And he was 100 days in. And one of the things I'll never forget him saying was, it was way worse than I thought. And I just thought, oh no, like that stinks, right? But he'd done everything he knew, but man, they didn't tell him everything, right? And it doesn't mean he wouldn't take the job again. It doesn't mean those kind of things, but by golly, we need to try to get in as far as we can and hear as much as we can ahead of time. And so a big part of that is just, one of the ways I like to liken it is I'm looking for themes in these things. And so, how when you buy a red car and you've thought, I've never seen a red car like this in my life. And then all of a sudden you see 50 of those red cars a day because your radar is different. And you're just looking, your senses, your spidey senses are a little different in that sense. What you're trying to hear is these themes so that then your senses and your discernment are gaining traction within that space. And then you as a leader have some more insight on how to lead it to the next part.
Things like the P&L and looking at the numbers are a little bit more concrete. You can figure out, it's kind of pass fail. But when it comes to how the team is doing, obviously early on, the team is feeling a lot of pressure to get the new boss to like them and say the right things. They may be tempted to say, let's not look in that corner, or, they're checking boxes. How do you disarm them and make sure they feel safe to give you the real for real, or that their job's not going to be on the line? How do you approach some of these more human, sticky kind of conversations that aren't as concrete and objective as like a P&L, for example?
Yeah, I do this in my my consulting business, and I would say this is the same case if I stepped into a team right now that I didn't start. When I'm doing the audit, I always lay some groundwork or some ground rules, right? Some framework that says, hey, here's where we need to start. Number 1, I know that you love this place or you care about this place. Number 2, I know, say it out loud. I know these 4 things. And one of those is that you care about this place. And I want them to know that I know that they care about the leader or the place, because then I'm going to say, but if you're not able to be honest, we're not going to be able to move this thing forward. But so many people in their honoring and their respect, they don't want to be like bad-mouthing this situation or talking about the toxic culture, because they're literally feeling like, well, gosh, but I love that person, but they're not good at their job. And you're like, okay, great. I love that you love that person, but we will never get better if we're not honest about these things. And so that's what I mean by that really part, right? It's like, I'll tell you 75%, but that 25% is sticky and it's got a lot of gray area. Well, let's go in there as leaders and let's remove the gray area and say, hey, this is a safe space. This is a space where you have to tell me really what's going on. And I think if you can do that, they will start trusting you more and more and more, seeing. Now, here's the key, and leaders can lose it as quickly as they gain it. If you don't manage that information well, that's a problem. And so you as a leader have a responsibility now, a management, a stewardship of that information to use it for theming and understanding what's going on, but not as a weapon or a crutch for that person.